Damian Lillard is coming home. The star guard is back in Portland, Oregon on a 3-year, $42 million deal. This is huge news. First of all, this is major for both Lillard personally and Portland as a whole because he meant so much to this city. He became synonymous with the Trailblazers and he was the face of NBA loyalty because for so many years, there were so many situations you could point to and say that Lillard, no matter how great he was individually, he just could not take this team over the top. But he stood and he stayed with Portland throughout it all. So many times you could point to him and say that you could not blame him for leaving, but he stayed. He was the face of loyalty in a league where that was so often gone, so often lost. He represented a sense of belonging, a sense of community, sticking with the team in the association that had drafted him and the team for which he had become a superstar with. And then when he left for Milwaukee, it never quite felt right, to me at least, seeing him in a jersey that was not Portland. And I'm sure if he stayed there for a longer time, it would have made more sense. But to me, it always felt like that Bucks tenure, if it ended with a ring, that would have been great. But if it didn't, it just didn't feel quite like home. And obviously, Lillard felt much the same way because now he's back to the place that he can call home in Portland, Oregon. This is great for him personally, for his family. He told a story about his daughter saying that now they wouldn't have to get back on that plane to Milwaukee. They don't have to fly back now. They can stay in the place that Dame called home for so many years. He is back in Portland. That's great for both the organization, the city, and him. He represented that city, and he represented loyalty in the NBA. Now he is back. And then, of course, we get to the basketball side of things. And I think this is one of the best rosters that Lillard has ever had around him, especially in Portland. Because, of course, with Milwaukee, you had the Giannis situation. That was a great deal on paper, never quite got to see it to its fullest potential. But over here with the Trailblazers now, for a long time, and this kind of played into Lillard leaving, it never felt like they had a championship level roster around him. It felt like they just weren't putting the right pieces around Lillard. Because this is a superstar in every sense of the word, an elite point guard at his peak, but that is mostly predicated upon his offense. When it comes to his defense, you've got to work around that and build a proper roster around him. You can't just hope everything falls into place. There has to be an active effort with Lillard, and he's going to be a stud for you offensively, but defensively, you've got to be able to work around him. And for the longest time, they didn't really quite do that. Because for many years, what the Trailblazers were built around was that backcourt duo of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. Now, CJ is also a very good offensive player, but his defense leaves a lot to be desired. And so it kind of became contradictory to have both guys on the court at the same time because they were doing pretty much the same thing. Lillard just on a higher level, and it didn't quite pan out. And they just always had kind of this offensive minded roster around an offensive minded superstar, and it just wasn't quite able to take them over the top. But now you've got this roster that's got a lot more defense to it. From Kamara to Klingon to Denny Advia to even Drew Holiday if he stays. And so, in my mind, this is one of the best situations you've had around Lillard, if for the Trailblazers, in almost forever. Because for the longest time, you just didn't quite have that championship level roster around him. But then he leaves, and as soon as he leaves, it's almost like you're able to build a roster that fits like a glove around Lillard. As soon as he's gone, you've got the roster that he's always kind of dreamed of that fits well around him. And now he's come back and he's got a chance to work with that roster. And it's going to be very fun to watch the Trailblazers. He's going to be out this next year without Achilles, unfortunately, but sooner rather than later, he will be back and he will be playing. He's going to have a pretty good roster around him, one that is really suited to his abilities. And then probably the biggest elephant in the room, the biggest question mark here is that of Scoot Henderson. Because as soon as we really started to see the cracks forming, they drafted Scoot Henderson, and that felt like Lillard then had one foot out the door because that was the point guard of the future, someone that you're going to develop and hopefully can be a franchise cornerstone. And so in drafting him, it felt as though you could say that to try to save face, you could say that you could fit in Scoot Henderson and Damian Lillard together, but in reality, that was never going to truly be the plan. And so with that, it felt like Lillard had one foot out the door, and ultimately he left for Milwaukee. So with that, Scoot Henderson, that's kind of the elephant in the room. And that's going to be something to try to figure out over this next year. I think it's really vital what we're going to see from Scoot Henderson in year 3 in regards to what his role is going to be moving forward. Because if he's able to have a really good third year in this league, I think maybe you want to play him alongside Damian Lillard, have Lillard at that shooting guard maybe when he eventually comes back around. But it's going to be a lot of pressure on Scoot. And so this is kind of a testing moment for him because the biggest stars in the NBA are made off of pressure. So how is he going to respond? Is he going to take it and fail? Is he going to take it, go into year 3 with all this weighing on his mind, and that's going to bring him down? Or is he going to elevate him to the next level? And I think also you have the mentorship of Lillard on offense and Drew Holiday on defense right now, that could really help him on both sides of the court. I think this could be beneficial to Scoot if he allows it to be. And eventually, maybe you get into a backcourt where in the waiting years of Lillard's career, you have him and the guy who's going to pass on the torch to in Scoot Henderson. That's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. But otherwise, this roster seems perfectly tailored to Damian Lillard and his skill set. And then we get to the last part, this contract, kind of the legacy of Damian Lillard. It's 3 years, $42 million. So this first year, of course, you've got the recovery from the Achilles. Second year, we're going to see him. Third year, it's a player option. So it's really kind of a 2-year deal with a player option for that second one. So ultimately, I think Damian Lillard, he has options. And he's coming home to Portland. That's going to be a great reunion. But if he wants to leave, if he believes in a championship, if he wants to win somewhere else for his legacy before time his career is over, he has a choice to. He has leverage here. But overall, I think this move ultimately for his legacy, it defines him as the player that he was for so long in Portland as this amazing offensive superstar that everybody's going to remember, especially if you were around when he was playing at his peak. But he never quite got over the hump to win a championship. And when he left for Milwaukee, it felt like he was giving himself one last chance at a title. That never ultimately happened, and now he's going back to Portland, the place he called home, and probably I think that's where he's going to settle down. I think that's ultimately what this move is for. The following years of his career, he has leverage if he doesn't want to, but I think in terms of Lillard's legacy, he's going to go down as a Portland Trailblazer forever. He's going to end his career as a Trailblazer, and he's got a perfect roster around him to do so. He can pass the torch down to Scoot Henderson when it's all said and done. I think this is a great reunion, one that was met with wide praise across the NBA community, not just the Portland Trailblazers fans, but everybody, because everybody knows how much Lillard means to Portland. It's great to see him back. Lillard is a Trailblazer once again, but in the hearts of many fans, he never wasn't a Trailblazer. He always was. His home was always in Portland, Oregon, and now number 0 is back. Dame Time is back in Portland. And when he recovers from that Achilles tear, no matter what kind of player he's going to be, because, we saw with Kobe Bryant in the final years of his career, it has a way of significantly affecting your play. No matter what Lillard looks like when he's back on the court, I know that there's going to be a crowd of packed fans ready to cheer for him and root for Lillard in the final stages of his career, back where it all started, back to his home as a Portland Trailblazer. Damian Lillard is back. He has come home. What a ride it has been for the NBA superstar, and what a way to close out the twilight years of his career. Damian Lillard is home, a Trailblazer once again.